Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We are in Paul's letter to the Galatians, starting at chapter 1, verse 18, going through chapter 2, verse 10. Paul talks about how after 3 years of learning what it meant to be a Christian, he goes up to Jerusalem and he meets with Peter, Cephas, and also the Lord's brother, James. And then after being there just over 2 weeks, he goes back to Syria, to Damascus, and to Sicilia. After 14 years of doing ministry with Barnabas and with Titus and others, he now comes back to Jerusalem, right? And he brings Barnabas and Titus is a Gentile. And he talks about how they did not compel Titus, even though he's a Greek, to be circumcised. And he says, I presented to them the gospel I was preaching, because I wanted them to know I am preaching the true gospel, that the teaching of the apostles is preserved. Even more, what's preserved is the teaching from Jesus himself that was given to Paul. But then Paul says there were some false believers who showed up. Now, why are they false believers? Because even though they call themselves Christians, they really live by the law. They don't believe in grace. They believe in being good, in working for your righteousness. And the thing is he says that they are intent in putting them back under the law, to once again have to live by doing good, by making choices to be good, and again, to make us slaves under the law, where we're constantly trying to satisfy the law. The thing is they begrudge the freedom that Paul and these Gentile believers have in Christ. And so they are secret law-bringing spies. And the thing is that the freedom we have in Christ is freedom from the law. If you don't have Christ, all you have is the law. If you don't have Christ, all you have is working to show that you're making the right decisions. In a sense, being under the law, you're a political being. But if you're freed in Christ, you're freed from the law, the obligation of the law, because you can't fill it anyways, then you're freed to be a human being, not a political being. And who you are is based on who God is, not on what you do. He goes on to say that the churches in Judea and Jerusalem didn't know Paul by the face, but they praised God that the one who used to be a persecutor of the church was now preaching the faith. And he talks about how Peter and the Apostle John and how the Lord's brother James, that they gave fellowship with Peter. They recognize that he's actually preaching the gospel, and that this gospel is salvation in Christ, through Christ alone, without works of the law, not based on works of the law, that frees us from the law so that we're freed in Christ. And so God is at work in them both. Peter is preaching to the Jewish community, those who have been circumcised, to free them from the law. And Paul is preaching to the Gentiles, so that they also could be freed from the obligation of the law, so they could all be free in Christ. Well, thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.